Today, a new report from Gemini reveals U.S. crypto investors will likely take a presidential candidate's crypto stance into account when voting in November. Robinhood CEO Vlad Tenev tells CNBC crypto signals a shift in how financial services are offered and delivered. And Swan Bitcoin Stephen Lubka weighs in on the September effect on crypto and how each potential election outcome could influence prices. Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World. I'm Tanea McKeel. Crypto prices are in the green, with Bitcoin trading above $56,500 as of around noon Eastern, after rebounding last night from its worst week in more than a year. Ether climbed about 1.5%, and Solana rose nearly 4.5% to $134. September is a historically weak month for Bitcoin and risk assets at large. Last week, Bitcoin fell 9% for its worst weekly performance since August 2023. Investors have been frustrated as Bitcoin has been lacking major catalysts for several weeks. Analysts say that in their absence, the Bitcoin price is likely to be extra sensitive to macro factors and to continue consolidating. The upcoming presidential election in the U.S. is widely considered the next meaningful catalyst for Bitcoin, which has been stuck between $55,000 and $70,000 for most of the year after reaching its all-time high above $73,000 back in March. As we told you yesterday, Bernstein is forecasting that the outcome of the presidential election will lead to a significant impact on the price of Bitcoin, which we'll come back to in a moment. Okay, let's take a look at the top stories. A new report from Gemini reveals that the crypto markets are poised for a rebound, although regulatory concerns remain a hurdle for those who do not yet invest in digital assets. According to those surveyed in the Crypto Exchange's 2024 Global State of Crypto report, the vast majority, 65%, said they hold crypto for its long-term investment potential. The report also revealed that in the United States, 37% of crypto owners surveyed hold some crypto through an ETF, and 13% own crypto exclusively through an ETF. Spot crypto ETFs, of course, were introduced in the U.S. this year. Also, among those who own crypto in the U.S., 73% said they plan to consider a presidential candidate's stance on crypto when they head to the polls in November. The report noted that despite significant headwinds, adoption of digital assets has remained steady in the U.S., UK, France, and Singapore in recent years. Next, Robinhood CEO Vlad Tenev says crypto will prove to be a big boon to innovation and financial services over time, and that the U.S. will get there in terms of acceptance. While speaking to CNBC at Goldman Sachs' Communacopia Tech Conference this morning, Tenev was asked where crypto fits into the platform's business strategy, especially after announcing in June its acquisition of global crypto exchange Bitstamp. Tenev said that crypto is about more than making trades and placing bets. He thinks it could be a major upgrade to finance.
I think there's a more interesting view of crypto, which is that it's an infrastructure upgrade and a shift in how financial services are offered and delivered. And if you look at blockchains and the efficiency with which you can offer collateralized lending, trading, market making, clearing and settlement, it really has the potential to solve a lot of the legacy issues with the financial infrastructure that we have in this country. And I think over time that will become more clear as you're seeing growth in products globally. And I do think the US will continue to embrace the technology.
Now, as Robinhood has expanded into the crypto space, it has also faced pushback from U.S. regulators. The company said in May that its crypto division received a Wells notice from the SEC. At the time, it said the company attempted to work in good faith with the agency and that its products were not securities. Finally, a new FBI report reveals crypto fraud losses jumped 45% in 2023. The FBI's cryptocurrency fraud report for 2023, which was published yesterday, shows that the agency's Internet Crime Complaint Center received nearly 70,000 complaints related to crypto fraud. That resulted in more than $5.5 billion in reported losses. Of the nearly 70,000 complaints received, almost 58,000 of the victims were from the U.S. Investment schemes led those losses at just under $4 billion, a 53% surge from the $2.5 billion reported in 2022. At number 2, personal data breach cases, which led to nearly $500 million in losses. Tech support fraud rounded out the top 3 at $420 million. According to the report, criminals turn to crypto because of its speed, decentralized nature, and the jurisdictional challenges that come with asset recovery. The FBI encourages those targeted by crypto fraud schemes to report a complaint on ic3.gov, even if a financial loss didn't occur. All right, back to markets for our main story. I spoke with Stephen Lubka, head of private clients at Swan Bitcoin, about the seasonal volatility weighing on Bitcoin. We also discussed how Bitcoin could fare once the U.S. decides its next president in November. Thank you so much for joining me. It's great to see you. We are dealing with the September effect, as expected, in Bitcoin and risk assets more broadly. There has been a bunch of volatility, but in terms of the price action, Bitcoin is, for the most part, unchanged, still kind of in that tight range that it's been in for most of this year. Can you tell us what's going on here? Like I said, it's a lot of movement, but it's a lot of stuff that's kind of the same. What do investors need to know?
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. So not much has happened. People have gotten a little chopped up. It's up 10%, it's down 10%. But if you look at the last 6 months, very little has changed. There's been a lot of noise along the way that people have gotten caught up in. So a question I see a lot along these lines is why didn't Bitcoin go higher? We had this great run up into the ETFs, post the ETFs, and then it got kind of range bound. And so why is that? A big factor there is we had huge pockets of supply that got unlocked and were sold into the market. You have the US Marshals selling in excess of $1 billion from the Silk Road coins. You have Germany selling $3 billion. And you have the very long-awaited Mt. Gox distributions where people who have been waiting for these coins 8 years plus got their coins finally. If you're waiting to receive some Bitcoin from a bankruptcy for over 8 years, some of those people are going to sell some of those coins. I think it was relatively muted compared to what it could have been. This was a very billions of dollars here. But definitely some sell pressure there. And so during that time period where we went sideways, there was a lot of selling from kind of surprise, kind of somewhat unexpected pockets. But we are on the other side of that now. The US Marshals have very little left that is currently available for sale. We're pretty much through the Mt. Gox distributions. And on the horizon, the FTX bankruptcy is going to return funds to clients in Q4. This is coming back as cash, $16 billion. We will assume that some percentage of those people who are trading on FTX are just going to immediately rebuy Bitcoin and other assets. So whether that's 30, 40, 50% of that money, definitely some buy pressure coming in the next 3 months.
Let's dig a little bit more into that macro. So what would you say is driving things? Because next to the macro, we also have the election. We are looking forward to the announcement of rate cuts. Probability of 50 basis points of a cut is down for September, but more than 125 by December is up. So how do you, since we're also contending with the US presidential election, is there a dominant theme here?
Yeah, they're both important, right? And so both in the past, right, we had a run up, and I'm saying this very non-politically, just as much as this impacts markets. Markets in the Bitcoin space, in the crypto world, were very positive on Donald Trump looking like he was going to win. They ran up. Then when there was the candidate switch out, you had Biden swap for Harris. That kind of unwound, that kind of bump unwound. And the election's closer to a coin flip right now. So I think people just really feel there's not a discernible edge. This is reflected in the polling data. So I think markets would react very positively, especially Bitcoin and crypto markets, to a Trump presidency for several reasons, mostly just vocal support of the industry rather than opposition. That being said, I think people really overplay the risks of a Harris presidency. I think there's fear because the Biden administration was pretty hostile. We encountered that. I mean, my company had bank account pressure during the kind of Operation Choke Point days. So we faced that directly. And so I know the challenges that the Biden administration's policy, meant for companies in the industry. That being said, I think all of the signposts that we're seeing with Harris continually represent a de-escalation. I understand the industry wants something more solid, something more concrete than what we've seen, but the trend is clearly softening, not strengthening. And as far as so you have rate cuts, you have recession probabilities, and you have the election. And these are the three big macro topics. I think the market is pretty convinced that rates are going to be coming down. The only question is at what pace. That will be positive. That's a positive kind of liquidity factor. The real fear right now, the thing that is uncertain, is will the US see a recession? And so when we see these payrolls data, when we see jobs data, this is the really important factor now, not the rate cuts. Is the Fed going to be cutting rates into an active recession, or will they be cutting rates into a kind of Goldilocks scenario growth zone where the economy, it's not super hot and growing really rapidly, but it's not a recession. That kind of cutting rates into a moderating economy, that's the best case scenario. The more we see of that, the better assets do. If the market starts to feel that the Fed is emergency cutting rates into a recession, that will be bearish for all asset prices. And so that's what people are looking for. I think that last factor, that has the most weight here.
And then going back to the election for just a sec, and this is not even a question about the election, but Bernstein had a note out yesterday kind of highlighting what a stark difference it would be if one candidate were to win versus the other. They were saying if Trump wins, Bitcoin could go to 80K by the end of the year. And if Harris wins, it could fall to 40K by the end of the year. And this is not so much about the election, but it seems like the more bullish calls for Bitcoin are kind of getting lower and staying below 100K. What do you make of that? Do you see it going higher? Do you think that's fair? And then what do you make of, this mellowing out, I guess, of these calls on Bitcoin price?
Well, part of it is we're only talking about 3 months here. The end of the year isn't too far away. So these are more shorter term calls. I think a range between 40 and 90 in the next 3 months. I think that's more than fair from the bear to the bull case. I think that is the range we'll probably settle in. Do I think we'll be in the six figures by 2025? Almost certainly. Do I think we'll be in the six figures regardless of who wins? Almost certainly. Now, within that kind of shorter time frame, if Trump wins in November, will there be an immediate pump? Yes, absolutely. If Harris wins, could there be some immediate sell pressure? That certainly wouldn't surprise me. But over the medium term, I don't think that's the dynamic. I don't think a Harris presidency is Bitcoin just going down for a year or anything like that.
Okay, that's all for Crypto World today. We'll be back again tomorrow, and we'll see you then.